This episode of Dopey is brought to you by our very good friends at Oro Recovery. Located in sunny Southern California, Oro was created by our friend Bob Forrest and his friends Evan, Jarrett, and Bob. Their mission: to create a rehab facility that helps addicts and alcoholics by using compassion and connection rather than control. What an amazing idea. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours or decades of experience in treating co-occurring mental health disorders, including severe mental illness. They make sure that when you're kicking drugs, that the detox is as comfortable as possible, which is crucial when you're kicking heroin or meth or pills or alcohol or anything. A good detox is a good detox. They have amenities you wouldn't believe. Fucking sound bath meditation, surfing, equine therapy, and of course my favorite, the potentially spiritually transformative sweat lodge. If you're fucked and you're in sunny Southern California or you're willing to get there, I cannot suggest going to Oro enough. They are incredibly high rated in all of the publications. I read in Newsweek they were like top 5 in the world. Everyone that I know that has been to Oro had a good experience. So check them out at ororecovery.com. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by our very good friends at Sober Buddy. I don't know if you're seeing all the Sober Buddy challenges I'm actually out in the world doing, but I love the Your Sober Buddy app. It's got a free tracker. So go to yoursoberbuddy.com, download the free tracker, and boast about your clean time. It's also an amazing app just to help you stay sober, or if you're in the beginning of your recovery, it offers a million tips, pointers, and has challenges to help keep you on the good foot. Check it out at the App Store or the Google Play Store, or check it out at yoursoberbuddy.com. And remember, the tracker is free. Get it and post. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by our good friends at SoberLink. Each and every person in the fight against alcohol addiction has their own reason for recovery. Maybe it's a husband, wife, daughter, son, mom, dad, best friend, colleague, job, hobby, or just yourself. Whatever your reason for recovery, we're all in this together. On Dopey, our mission includes building a strong community, the importance of staying connected, and working to break the stigma, plus other dumb shit. And that's why we've partnered with SoberLink, to expand and strengthen our community even further. SoberLink is a remote alcohol monitoring technology created to help provide accountability for people in recovery. Chris used it for years, which is why I feel so close to SoberLink. The system includes a high-tech breathalyzer device with facial recognition that allows you to share your sobriety in real time with loved ones who can offer support in the event of a slip or a relapse. SoberLink has helped hundreds of thousands of people document proof of sobriety in real time to help rebuild trust and faster peace of mind. SoberLink is currently building a strong community of people in recovery through an online forum where people can read and share their recovery stories. Get inspired and inspire others today by joining the community at www.soberlink.com/dopey. Chris used to use SoberLink during the show and transmit the results to his family. Use SoberLink. Go to www.soberlink.com/dopey right now. We have a new sponsor. Very exciting stuff. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by a book. It is called Thanks for Letting Me Share. It's by Stephen McDonald, a member of the Dopey Nation. It is for you or anyone you know who is in recovery or struggling with the disease of addiction and alcoholism. Thanks for Letting Me Share contains 368 quotes heard from recovering addicts and alcoholics. They are profound, funny, cringeworthy, memorable, helpful, and powerful. They will allow you to reflect, remember, and reassess your recovery. Thanks for Letting Me Share is broken up into 3 parts: getting here, staying here, and higher power. Order your copy right now. It's available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Kobo, iTunes, and Audible.com. All the proceeds for Thanks for Letting Me Share are used to buy more books and sent to rehabs across the United States. We can only keep what we have by giving it away. It's an amazing book. Thanks for Letting Me Share. Order yours now. And finally, this episode of Dopey is brought to you by our friends at Mobilize Recovery. It is a nonprofit organization, and it is near and dear to my heart. Their mission is to help end overdose and addiction in America. There's a way for everyone to get involved, and there is no cost. There is no hidden agenda. Mobilize Recovery is all about us, our community, and what we can do together to inspire recovery solutions across the United States. Ryan Hampton set it up. He's on a bus traveling right now. Here's a little bit from him.
Hey everybody, this is Ryan Hampton, recovery advocate and founder of Mobilize Recovery. And I'm jumping on with Dopey today because we need you to help end overdose, end addiction, and inspire solutions for recovery across the United States. This September, the nonprofit initiative Mobilize Recovery is launching a national bus tour in partnership with iHeartMedia and Google. And we want to learn what your community, your organization, and your projects are doing to mobilize for change. Help us map the journey across the country. Learn more today at mobilizerecovery.org and submit your ideas to us. There's so many ways for you to get involved and to help us highlight the recovery experience that is so unique in different regions across all 50 states. Go to mobilizerecovery.org to learn more and to help us map this journey. And I hope we get to meet so many of you this coming September during National Recovery Month.
Before we start the show, I just wanted to mention something really important that I planned on mentioning in the show, but I didn't mention in the show, which is that DopeyCon tickets are going on sale to the general public on Monday. So if you're in the Patreon, scoop them up now. We're running out of tickets. Buy your tickets this weekend. If not, and you don't want to join Patreon, buy them on Monday. We're having a free Dopey Patreon Zoom to the general public. It is in the Dopey Zoom room. It is Sunday night at 8:30 Eastern. Dopey Nation Zoom is out there and it's rocking. And I just want to give a shout out to Taylor, who got clean in the Dopey Zoom. She's got like 120 days. Fucking Wick got clean in the Dopey Zoom. Scott Wick. Who else got clean in the Dopey Zoom? Maybe Stephanie got clean via the Dopey Zoom and just celebrated a couple years. So like the Dopey Zoom is happening and it's helping people. And the Dopey Zoom needs facilitators. So if you want to be a facilitator in Dopey Nation Zoom, go to the meeting. There's like 26 meetings a week. The password is the address is 804-300-586. The password is Toodles, all lowercase. Buy Dopey gear at dopeypodcast.com. New design is coming out. I swear to God, the Forever in Debt design should be coming out soon. But mostly, buy tickets for DopeyCon. If you're on Patreon, you have a couple more days before they're released. Brandon Novak is confirmed. Andy Roy is confirmed. Dr. Drew will probably be there. A couple other people. Surprises. My dad, Linda. Who knows who's going to be at DopeyCon? But I know I'll be there, and I know a lot of you will be there because a lot of people bought tickets. So get your tickets. They are on sale for Patreon now, for regular on Monday. Check it out. Anyway, enough of this. Here's the show. Well, I got a couple more seconds before the show. So I'll tell you to buy Dopey candles too. You go to northavecandles.com/collections/Dopey. Buy Dopey candles. What else am I supposed to tell you to do? I have to tell you to come to DopeyCon. DopeyCon is going to be a magical time. So come to DopeyCon, join Patreon, subscribe to YouTube, but just do whatever the fuck you want. Here's the show. Enough about me. Here's the fucking show. Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. Thank God we are back in Manhattan. I'm joined by the lovely and talented, strung-out author, formerly elite equestrian, and unlicensed advice columnist, Erin Carr. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
And how is the summer going?
It's going. I mean, I just got back from LA, as you know. I was there for 2 weeks, which felt very long. And I'm really glad
with your mom.
With my mom, at my mom's. I think it's too long as an adult in my 40s to be staying with a parent.
I understand. We're going to be staying at my dad's, and, you know, I love my dad. I just
love my mom.
I get weird.
Yeah.
Like, I get weird, like I know how to parent. I take care of my kids
Right.
and all that. You know, I don't know. There's a lot of weird shit that happens, and it's easy. Does your mom ever, my dad never really alludes to the fact that I was strung out or that I was an addict, or none of that shit ever pops up. Does your mom ever take you to task for anything from the past at this point?
No. I mean, this is all that's all like 19 and a half years ago.
I know. That's why I'm asking.
So no. I mean, we do talk, things from the past come up sometimes, but like, she's not giving me grief about them in present day.
And you weren't like a classic fuck up. I was a classic fuck
Right.
up, and my dad likes to, you know, relish in, because I also am sort of a little bit of a current fuck up in you know, I'm not.
You're not.
I'm not, but I still carry the baggage of fuck uppery because of my style. I'm so laid back. I seem like I could be a fuck up.
But I stole jewelry from
her
my mother and sold it and pawned. I mean, I did some fucked up things. It's
Does she
not like
ever-
I didn't.
Does she ever reclaim that stuff?
Oh, it comes up occasionally. I mean, especially because there were things that I sold that were from my grandmother that, you know, I couldn't get back.
Does she ever say, oh, it'd be really nice to have my mother's pearls?
No.
I really love them. She never says anything like
No,
that?
there was like that jade pendant, but
The jade pendant.
I know.
See, I couldn't tell the difference between my mother's jewelry, like what was good and what wasn't good. I figured it was all garbage.
Right.
But like I knew like there were diamond rings.
Right.
But if I had taken one of my mother's diamond rings, like it would I could ask for money. I could be like, I need money.
Right.
I wasn't gonna like the wrath of my mother would have been like insanity.
I mean, I think I took things that I thought she wouldn't notice were missing right away.
like the jade pendant.
Yes,
What
but
was
then-
the jade pendant shaped like?
It was sort of like it was kind of like a natural teardrop shape. Like it was kind of teardrop shaped, but it was also like natural looking edges.
I wish it was a monkey and it would be the jade monkey pendant.
But you know, years after that, I was already sober. But something went missing. I don't even remember what it was. And I was so worried that she would think it was me.
Right.
And it wasn't. And I remember that happened once with my dad too. Like he was missing like an envelope of cash.
Wow.
And I knew that he thought it was me. And then he finally found it. And then I was like, phew,
How long were you sober?
a couple years.
What's up with the envelope of cash?
I don't know. That's how he rolled, I guess.
Nice.
Because he would go buy antiques. My dad still is like, he's slowed down a little bit, but like always would buy a lot of antiques. So he would often have cash
to barter, to bargain.
I mean, just to go like buy stuff. Yeah.
But you can get a better deal with cash.
Yes.
Be like, I'll give you $370 instead
Yes.
of $600.
Yes.
I only have this much cash on me.
Right.
He'd be like, this envelope only has $10,000 in small bills. Well, the envelope of cash going missing, yes. Like, my dad always leaves money on the cleaning table, or on the dining room table for Maurice, the cleaning lady. And every time I see it, I think about taking it.
It just passes through your mind. Yeah.
Wow. I think in the old days I might have done that a few
Right.
times and acted as though I didn't. Or maybe I never took it and maybe I always wanted to take it.
Right.
Last week was a banner show for Dopey. That's my segue.
Yes. It was a powerful episode.
Well, it was 4 years since Chris died. It's rough for me that week. Not the memory. I mean, the memory is part of it, but it's the figuring out the show part, which is like a nuisance on top of the grief and figuring out. And then like I always wind up playing the same clips I always play because I get like I'm not prepared, and so like. But I thought Don's story was rough. Don's fucking relapse story is rough.
I'm so glad that he came on there and talked about it, and I'm really glad that he's not dead, and that, you know, I mean, I think he talked about it in a really honest and open way, and it was really compelling.
Well, there's absolutely, and Don is a friend of mine, and he loves Dopey, and he loves the Dopey Nation, and I know that story is very helpful for the audience.
Absolutely.
And I think it was helpful for him because he heard from people in the audience and he feels like resituated nestled into our community, which is nice. It's because like we had talked about it. There's a ton of people relapsing out there, a ton of people.
Right.
And then some people come back and other people don't get to come back. And that's the reality of it. And I got a voicemail that it was a real classic kind of dopey voicemail. It wasn't like a maudlin. It was a real like using voicemail.
Right.
And but it references Chris's death, so I won't play it.
Okay.
What's up, Dave? I just wanted to send you a voice memo at the time where we all remember Chris's life. Chris died on my birthday, July 24th, so I'm not sure what that means, but I do know that I felt a connection with Chris. He said when he was young, he would stay up all night reading drug stories, trip reports on Arrowhead, and I can relate to that. Also, he ordered a lot of research chemicals on the dark web and knew everything about those, so I also did the same. Anyways, I'll get into it here. I'm currently not sober, although I stay away from hard drugs mainly. Recently, I was at a bachelor party in Las Vegas, and my one friend was there who is really into fentanyl. I saw him kind of sneak away into the bathroom, and I knew what was going on, and I begged him to tag along, and he obliged. And I'd never seen anything like this, but his tolerance was just so obscene that he would load like 5 of those fake 30s onto the foil and shape the foil in like almost like a little cereal bowl, which I'd never seen. I don't know if you'd call it that, but he shaped the foil to hold all 5 where he could smoke all 5 at once. And, I thought that was pretty crazy, but I let him know I was just going to do one. And so he said it was my turn for one. And then I don't know if I was tipsy on alcohol or what the deal was, but I decided to do some quick math in my head and came to the conclusion that if I was going to smoke one for 8 or 10 seconds, that if I just rip all 5 of these, I only have to hit it for like 2 seconds or something like that. So, the math checks out, and that's what I did. And I just put the flame under all 5 of them and hit it for a couple seconds. Blew out a pretty big cloud, and, I survived. But anyways, it just, I think later that night we ordered a hooker to the room, but when she got there, she ended up costing like $1,000. So we kicked her out, and then the next day I ate some shrooms, went clubbing. So although I survived, I probably won't get so lucky next time. And I just really appreciate you, Dave, because although I don't go to meetings right now, Dopey is my meetings, and it honestly has probably kept me out of a lot of situations like that. So appreciate all you do, Dave. Bye-bye.
All right. Now, I know this is going to be very controversial of me. First of all, I love that voicemail. Like, that's a classic fucking Dopey voicemail. He calls himself Jay. Thank you, Jay. First thing I want to say is Dopey shouldn't be a meeting for anybody. Just want to make that clear. We are not in any way a replacement for a meeting at all. Jay, you should go to a fucking meeting. He's like, I'm not going to meetings because he's tipsy, fucking ordering whores and smoking fentanyl. It's like, of course you're not going to meetings, Jay. I love that story though. I want to read the email too. Well, first, what's your comment? You're just scared for poor Jay because he's smoking 5. He also has a voice. His voice is just like Greg in Succession. He sounds like Greg in Succession.
I need to catch up on that show.
You never caught up on it?
I am not caught up on it.
The new season, I think, was the best one.
Because I was waiting to watch like the end of season 2 with my husband, and then like he never wanted to watch it. I just need to watch it by myself.
Yep. Anyway, what's your take on Jay?
Be careful. I mean, I had this discussion, I think I told you earlier when I was in LA. I'm so lucky that fentanyl was not around in that way when I was using.
Yeah, hold on, Jay, be careful. Forget my first reaction. Be careful, Jay. You could kill you. And it's maybe there's something wrong with me.
I guess if you're going to do it, if you think you might do it, like at least get some naloxone to have on hand.
You have some Narcan on deck, Jay. You got Narcan on deck. One good thing, Jay, is you're getting a pair of Dopey socks because that's a classic Dopey voicemail.
Can you stick some naloxone in the sauce?
Maybe we should put some Narcan in the socks. But we're in a new partnership with Namaste at Home Dad, who's in a partnership with some unknown Narcan fentanyl source. So she's claimed
What do you mean fentanyl source?
I mean, not a fentanyl source. I mean a fentanyl test strip source. Yeah, forget what I just said. Not a fentanyl source. A fentanyl test strip source. And I don't know where she's getting it from. But put it like this, Jay. We're going to get you some Narcan with the Dopey socks. It's going to come separately. Maybe it'll come from Namaste. Maybe it'll come from Tracy Helton.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll come from Austin. You're getting naloxone, Jay. I'm going to read his email. He says, is this any good? The answer is yes. Fucking great. Thank you. But now he says, please be honest. I can probably make it more entertaining if you need it. Well, I should have read this before I played it. I know I left out a lot of funny details. Fuck, Jay. I like funny details, but I didn't want to make it too long. It was only my third take, so it could be better. It was great.
It was great.
Also, I actually have a ton of funny drug stories. I've been meaning to send in my first voice memo for over 3 years now. But maybe, as you say, I broke the seal. Do I say that? I don't know. Maybe I do. And maybe I will start sending them in.
It's kind of sexual, isn't it?
I never saw the seal as a sexual seal. I always saw breaking the seal like the seal of a bottle of pills or a package. Yeah. Why is the seal sexual for you?
I don't know.
What's the seal you're talking about?
We don't need to discuss it.
Also, funny story. Were you talking about a hymen?
I guess that's what I meant. I don't even know why. That was the first.
The hymen.
That was my unfiltered thought.
Okay, that's good. Also, ask Aaron why, when we say broke the seal, do you think of hymens?
I don't know.
Because it's like de-virginizing.
That's like
somebody.
my fucked up stuff. Clearly.
Well, listen, I support you. I support your fucked up thinking. I think of pills or like cookies or ice cream.
Right.
Breaking the seal. I think.
I mean, that makes sense.
I think. Also, funny story, but when I first went into detox, I was on, this is a good story already. I was on too much LSD and research chemical benzos and disassociatives that they turned me away and sent me to a psych ward. There, I thought it was a good idea to change my name to Jay when I originally went by RJ. My mind was so messed up, I thought changing my identity would change my drug addiction problem. Everyone called me Jay for over 2 years while I was in the program because I rolled with it. When I left the program, I took back RJ, but you can refer to my addiction persona, Jay, if you refer to me in the show. The reason I thought it was funny because you have a fentanyl J on the show, and technically my story is about a fentanyl J. Well, Jay, thank you for contributing. This is great. You see how happy I am?
I know you are. You've made him very, very happy.
Seriously, I love a good story. Jay, you're fucking using though. You're out there. You're not working any kind of program of recovery. Jay, new fentanyl Jay.
Which, no judgment, but let's get you some naloxone.
Well, I mean, listen, Jay. This is all I have to say. No judgment, but don't think that you're not using.
Yeah.
Jay knows he's using them.
Yeah, he hasn't said that he's not.
Oh, I'm going to take that out. I don't want to say that. I'm actually just going to leave it out. All right, there's big news. First news is this week, DopeyCon tickets are going on sale to the general public.
Yay.
Did that play? Hold on.
No.
In other news, support Dopey Patreon, even though my big plan to get a lot of people to join Patreon to buy DopeyCon tickets kind of worked. A bunch of people joined.
Yeah.
We've sold a lot of tickets.
That's awesome.
So people, you better get rushing out to buy tickets. We're going to run out of tickets in a second.
And I have a prize to give away for Patreon.
All right. Well, what
members.
is it?
So I run a workshop with another writer, Lily Danziger, called Writing and Publishing Addiction Narratives. I know that there are a lot of people in the Dopey Nation who are writers. Last time I did the workshop, I gave away 2 scholarships to Dopey Nation members. And this time I'm going to give away 2 scholarship spots to Dopey Patreon
What a
members.
treat. What a treat
This
for the
is
patrons.
$125 value. It's August 6th via Zoom from 1 to 3 Eastern time. So you have to be able to make that specific time. But it's an amazing, we had such a good time last time. We like sold out and ended up adding a couple more spots. But it's an intimate group. You don't have to share work. It's really about discussing about sort of inherent problems in writing and publishing addiction narratives and how to approach them.
It sounds like I really need this workshop.
Yeah.
I need this workshop.
Maybe Dave needs the scholarship spot.
So sign up for Patreon to get the scholarship spot. Also, I just put up a video on Patreon where I was in Washington Square Park, and there's these new fangled drug dealers with drug stands, and I interview one, and he shows all of his wares.
It's all weed, right?
No, he also has mushrooms.
Oh, right.
And but he has this thing where you should watch it on Patreon.
Yeah, I saw it, but I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, it's this thing. Definitely watch it on Patreon.
I will.
It's a real experience in the park with a legal drug dealer. Also, subscribe to Dopey YouTube. Just do it.
Yes.
Maybe you'll see something you like. There's some good shit on there. And I'm about to hit the streets. I just bought this fancy lav phone microphone, and we're gonna hit the streets hardcore.
Oh, I like that. I like that you were in Washington Square Park because that's my hood.
I feel like I'm gonna be there a lot. Like I'm gonna try to do some interactive stuff with a lot of different people in the street. That is the plan. Now, before we have an exciting guest, we have an author,
yes,
a journalist, ex-con prisoner named Keri Blakinger,
Ivy
Leaguer, figure skater. She's coming up on the show. But before we get to it, I have an unusual story to tell you, which is, oh my God, the cat is gone.
Hallelujah.
The cat is gone. And there's been so many instances over the past, I think we've had the cat for 2 years. And I think what we did wrong was we went away like a month after we got the cat, and we had Linda's mom come and feed the cat. And around then, the cat started spraying our bed. And we had to start closing our door. And then and then maybe she started spraying. So if we ever left the door open, she sprayed the bed. And she started spraying whatever was on the floor. Then she started spraying Susan's bed. Then she started spraying whatever was on the floor in the basement. If we left a towel on the floor, she would spray it. And we tried every homeopathic cure. We tried everything. We even gave the cat Xanax. We got liquid Xanax. We got liquid cat Prozac. We gave this cat everything. I was ready to kill the cat. But Linda didn't want me to kill the cat.
Nobody wanted you to kill the cat.
I have a shovel that I was going to beat the cat with.
That's terrible.
And then dig a hole in the backyard and bury the cat. But somehow we found an alternative. The cat sprayed Nora's room. She never would spray Nora's room, and the door doesn't close in Nora's room.
Right.
There's a door problem. And she finally started spraying Nora's room. So we decided that we need to the cat's got to go.
Yeah.
And we found this amazing guy named Chris who runs a cat sanctuary in Long Island called Happy Cat Sanctuary.
I love that.
Happy Cat's a crazy place. There's like 300 cats there. There's like 3 different outdoor sections for Happy Cat. Inside, there are these decks built on top of decks so the cats can run up. There's posts that are 30 feet in the air.
Right.
There's wooden owls to prevent the hawks from attacking the cats. And this guy, Chris, is super dedicated. Happy Cat is a nonprofit no-kill adoption agency, trap, neuter, return, facilitator, and sanctuary in Suffolk County, Long Island. They specialize in rescue and rehabilitation of at-risk cats, including cats that have been shot at, hoarded, abused, neglected, and targeted by gangs for use as bait in the dogfighting rings. Wow, it's fucked up. Happy Cat Sanctuary has saved thousands of cats from abuse, neglect, torture, and death, rehomed hundreds of cats, and reduced the feral population by thousands with trap, neuter, release. So I want you guys to support Happy Cat. Their website is happycatsanctuary.com. The dude there is a fucking saint, Chris. He saved our home from the cat. And the fucked up thing, Aaron, what was the first thing you asked me?
I said, "Are you happy the cat is gone?"
And what did I say?
No,
I
I'm
miss
sad.
I miss the cat. I feel bad. It's like I love that cat. I hated the cat, but she was there. Like in the morning she was there. I like made sure she ate. I don't know. I hung out with the cat.
Right.
Like I hated that cat. I hated the cat. The cat ruined our house. We spent thousands of dollars on new rugs and deep cleaning carpets, deep cleaning furniture, and now the cat's gone. And I should be happy the cat's gone, but I guess part of me is happy the cat is gone.
You know what? You're sad right now, but ultimately this was better for your family and for the cat's health.
Yeah. I mean, the cat would be
the
like
cat's longevity.
The cat was going to get locked in the attic,
Right.
which was 100 degrees,
Right.
the basement, which is no bueno,
Right.
Which she didn't like. And once we locked her in the basement, there's 2 guinea pigs in the basement, so she had company. But she fucking sprayed the whole basement, and like it was not good.
She was not. That's not a happy cat.
Well, now she is with the other
she is a happy cat.
at Chris's Sanctuary. If you're an animal lover, please check out happycatsanctuary.com. And let's get to Keri Blakinger.
Let's do it.
And I'm joined by figure skating legend, author, drug addict, and journalist, Keri Blakinger. Welcome to the show.
I love the way you introduce me.
I like introducing. Do you miss figure skating?
Ooh, so yes and no. Like I miss it in that when you get good enough, there's a point at which you feel, this is going to sound cheesy, like at one with the ice, or like you are working with the ice instead of skating on it. And it sort of feels more natural than walking and, almost like breathing. And yeah, I miss that, but at the same time, I don't. People always ask, do I skate recreationally now? And I don't. I mean, it's been years. My body remembers how it felt when I was really good and I could do triples. And I am content to remember it like that instead of go back and, struggle with things that were easy and just, it would be disappointing for it to actually feel different than the way that my body remembers it,
Totally. I mean, I think it's funny, like, I'm trying to write, and writing doesn't come that naturally to me. Doing the podcast comes incredibly naturally to me. Doing drugs came pretty naturally to me. Do you find that writing feels anything like figure skating in that you can do what you want in the same way?
No. I think the spot that the itch that it scratches for me is just that I am really obsessive and intense. And, skating was my whole life, and then drugs were my whole life, and now it's work. Fortunately, I have a job that I'm passionate about, so it all works out. But I don't know that any professional writer says writing comes easily.
Right.
That's usually a bad sign, actually. If you say it comes really easily, like, a lot of...
You've got some work to do then.
Yeah, a lot of, people who write for a living will be like, oh, okay, well then.
And when... Is there any kind of connection in your mind between skating and drug addiction?
I think there are parallels.
And did skating... I mean, one of the things that I thought was really compelling in the book is the eating stuff around skating. Like, you have to be, and the control around eating and skating, right? Isn't control built into those two things?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yes, I had, pretty intense eating disorders for a lot of the time that I was skating. And I mean, I think that sort of, self-harm and addictive tendencies, like that has some clear overlap with later drug use. But, I don't think I realized at the time how much it was, it's not only about control. I feel like that's really trite. Like, therapists love to say eating disorders are about control. And that's true. That's part of it. But I mean, I think there's more to it than that. But I don't think I realized until much later as an adult looking back and understanding how much control you lack as a teen. Because that's all you know as a teen. But like now as an adult, I can see how little agency, you know, your average teen has. Plus, my parents were pretty strict and skating was, you know, pretty intense and restrictive. So I had a very controlled life. And looking back, it's easier to see how I would have reached towards, you know, eating disorders as a thing that I could control.
Sure. And like addicts and alcoholics often have the now I have arrived moment in using. Do you think, you know what I mean? Like where we get high, I got high and I was like, finally, I know how I want to feel kind of thing. Do you think you had that now I have arrived moment with skating where you're like, this is who I want to be?
So,
or is that a stupid question?
Well, like, so yes.
You're kind of looking at me like it's a stupid question.
Well, I mean, I don't think I thought of it in those terms, but here's the thing. With skating, like, even when it got to the point that I was like, this is, I don't know, this sounds dramatic, but like, this
Be
is
dramatic,
sort of
that's
the best
fine.
part of being human is this feeling, is doing this sport, you know? And even when I got to that point, like, it was not sort of like, oh, this is, I've arrived, this is how I always want to feel, this is who I want to be, because I knew that in skating, there's an age limit. I mean, not an official one, but realistically, you can't be competitive past a certain age.
What's the age limit?
I mean, when I was growing up, there was a 23-year-old who's competed at nationals, and we referred to her as the old lady.
Right.
So, you know, at 17, you know, that seems like the end is near, right? And I mean, it's also a sport where for as long as I could remember, there's always someone, you know, younger and better behind you. And then, of course, for women, there's also just the reality of like your body's going to develop and that you become less aerodynamic. Like it makes jumps harder
to develop.
Yeah.
That is tough because that means you're on this crazy timetable.
Yes.
And also the weight, you know, being a certain weight is like part of being able to do a triple jump, right? I mean, you described yourself as like perfectly like the musculature, like you were just like, what were you eating? Like describe the eating disorder a bit. Cause I remember like it was very intense.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there was a certain level of pride in it. Like, cause you were just like giving yourself as little food as you could. And you were super strong. And you were like, I was an engine that was a muscle.
Well, I think a lot of people who are in, you know, certain kinds of active eating disorders take some pride in it. I mean, in the end result, right? So I don't think that part was uncommon, but you know, I don't know. I ate.
It was carrots.
I ate a lot of carrots.
A lot of carrots.
Enough carrots that I turned orangish, which I know everyone would be like, no, that's just the thing your parents tell you. No, it can really happen. It was like around the corners of my mouth and like the backs of my knuckles. Like it was like slightly orangish. And, you know, and I drank a lot of coffee. And I don't think either of these things are uncommon for eating disorder behaviors.
At a very young age, coffee.
I mean, middle school, high school.
I have a daughter who's in middle school, and if she's like, Daddy, let me get a black coffee, I'd freak out. You know what I mean? I would not be comfortable with her drinking coffee. When did drugs jump in?
After my skating career fell apart. When I was, I guess, in my junior year of high school, by that point I was doing pairs, which is where the guy throws you around and it looks all dangerous and shit. And we competed at nationals twice. And after our second nationals, he said he wanted to branch out and find another partner. And at that point, I just fell apart. I describe it now as like, it's like if you got divorced and fired from your job and also every job forever. Because, you know, in a sport where there's so many more women than men, he could find another partner immediately. And for me, it could be like weeks or months or never. And as weeks went by and it became apparent I was probably going to have to take a season off in this sport where you know that there's a realistic age limit, I fell apart. And that summer, I went to Harvard summer school, and my parents thought this was a good solution. Like, this would be a thing that would get me restarted in the right direction, like sort of stop moping around and being, depressed all the time. But, and there was a rink nearby, so I could like walk to the rink and still train. And instead it meant that at the point that I was already starting to unravel, I suddenly had no supervision. And I'd gone from this, strict, very, very intense schedule to sort of being with just normal kids.
And you're on your own.
Right. And I'd really never also been around, like, I'd never spent a lot of time with just regular teenagers, And so anyways, I went to Harvard Summer School, and I think I smoked pot once and, did ecstasy and probably went right to heroin right after that.
What was the first time, like, how did it go from pot to ecstasy to heroin? That's a little bit unusual. And
I know it is.
How did it even happen?
I was just in a really self-destructive place.
Harvard? In Cambridge, Massachusetts? Is that where it was?
Yes, but mentally I meant in myself. I was in a very self-destructive place. I'm not saying that Cambridge is an inherently destructive place.
I get it, but I'm just saying
Although I do think the winters are fucking awful.
I like to hear, like, you're a kid and you're smoking weed and then you're, like, taking ecstasy. Where does heroin show up? Did you seek it out? Were you getting dopey ecstasy?
I was not getting dopey ecstasy, but I was seeking it out. I was again, like, I basically just wanted to die and didn't actually want to do it. So I was seeking out the sort of most destructive alternatives. And I did whatever was available. So that happened to be pot, and then, happened to find an opportunity to do ecstasy, and then, and then found heroin. Like, it wasn't some accidental slide, down into heroin. Like, that was intentional self-destruction.
How old were you?
I would have been 17 at that point.
And do you remember, like, where you got the first dope from?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time, but I'm still not going to rat the dude out.
I don't want any names. I want scenario. Give me the scenario.
So I've been hanging.
We can call him Flacco. Unless that was his name, actually.
It was not his
name. It was Flacco Rubenstein of Cambridge.
It was a very generic white guy name, but it was not Flacco Rubenstein.
Okay. So tell me what happened.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been hanging out in the pit in Harvard Square, which was at that point, like, I don't know, right where the T stop comes up, and that's where all the punks and, like, the homeless punk kids hung out and stuff. And I'd been hanging out with some of them.
Were you punky?
I became it some over time, but I mean, when I went to Cambridge that summer, I had been a figure skater, so.
Because I can see you now. Now, I don't know how old you are, but you have a certain ex-crusty punk look about you now. But I know you weren't some crusty punk then, because you have half your head shaved. She's got the nose ring. She's got the lip ring. She's got multiple earrings.
I've got a lot of great tattoos also, which is how I spent my book money, by the way.
On tattoos.
Yeah.
Serious tattoos.
Yeah.
Fucking legs tatted with the dragon. Arm tatted with a skull and spider, but you were not a crusty punk.
I mean, not at the start of it, but I got there.
Did you get to be crusty? Oh, you had dreads, but I thought that was a prison thing.
Much later.
Yeah.
I don't think I was crusty. I actually had people.
There's not any pictures in the book, that's one thing I wanted pictures in the book. But that's another thing. Forgive me.
I bet I have some on my phone here, but this really doesn't help your listeners.
No, but maybe I can dictate. But okay, so you're at Harvard Square and you see Flacco Rubenstein. What's the story?
We would have known I mean, I don't remember some of the details here, but, like, we would have known each other through this circle of, punks that were hanging out in Harvard Square. And I don't know. I got some from him. I don't remember if he fronted it or if I bought it, but I do remember. You
were like, I want to get heroin.
Yes, and I do remember doing my first line off the back of my copy of Sons and Lovers, which had been my summer reading for my senior year of high school. And yeah, I did not finish that year's summer reading, needless to say.
Right. And were you alone?
I don't think so. I think it was with someone else. Because I think he didn't want to sell to a minor. So we had to have someone else, like, who was going to be the one who was buying it. But, I mean, this was in 2001 or 2. So I did, like, 9 years of drugs after that. So, you know, you're really stretching the limits of my memory.
I remember the first time I did heroin, I was in college, and I was a stoner, and some dude was a musician, and he was like, "Do you guys want to try dope?" And I was like, "Okay." You know, I remember that. Like, how soon after the first time you did it were you like, "I need to be doing it"?
I mean, again, like, I was really just in a kind of self-destructive place. I was just trying to do whatever I could get my hands on. I
Sure.
didn't care how dangerous it was or how questionable the source was. You know, it wasn't about, it wasn't even so much about numbing or trying to feel the right way. It's just like I was actively trying to destroy myself.
So that was like the express train to not oblivion, but not existing,
Right.
which is different.
Right.
I sought oblivion. I sought the feeling that drugs would give me. You were like, this will kill me, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I don't think I was quite as I don't think I was quite as clear to myself. I wasn't like saying I want to die, but
Not yet.
But I mean, sometimes I was, you know. Yeah, so I do think that's part of why some of the early path of my addiction looks a little different than some of the, I don't know, most common trajectories.
Sure. I mean, listen, it's drug addiction is a weird thing, and there are some stories that are common, and there are some stories that aren't common, and like you've been through something, I've been through something, a lot of the audience has been through something, and I'm sure people have had experiences that are similar to yours, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So I think that will be helpful to somebody. When do you remember getting your first habit?
It was a few months later. I was living on the street by that point, and I remember being surprised that I was sick. I thought it was the flu, and then someone else was like, "No, that's not the flu. Like, you're dope sick," but not seriously, like not like it was a chippy, you know. And then after that, I think I eased off a little bit, but it wasn't so much intentional. It's just that I didn't always have money. I didn't always have access. I was, you know, homeless. And then, you know, went to rehab briefly, and I don't think I actually caught another serious habit until a couple years later.
Until after Hootie? Until the post-Hootie period?
Yes.
Now, you're a journalist. You interview people all the time. Is it weird to be interviewed?
So I've gotten a little bit used to that because, you know, I end up telling my story a lot. One thing that I think journalists do now that they didn't used to do as much, or I don't know, I mean, maybe I don't really have a basis for saying what used to be the case, is people talk about their stories a lot. Like, I get interviewed about my stories a lot, and often in those interviews, people are intrigued by the fact that I did time and I'm covering prisons. So it often comes up in the course of a lot of the interviews I do about any prisons reporting. But I've also done, I've done a decent number of podcasts and stuff, and I don't know, it's just a story that journalists tend to be interested in, like my very different path to journalism.
Right. Life experience path to journalism. Like, and also, like, when you finally became a journalist, you were like, wow, they're not asking about my record, and I can write, and and I can create, and they're going to pay me. It was a fucking amazing job to get out of jail.
Yeah, I mean, there are, to be clear, plenty of news outlets that I think wouldn't hire me because of my
felonies.
record. I think that's less true than it used to be. But there was definitely a time when more applications would have that box to check on them than is currently the case. And I mean, I suspect that even now that there are some outlets that, you know, nobody needs to background check me now, right? Because I wrote a fucking book. Like, it's pretty out there. But I think even now there's places that would probably not just be comfortable with that brand.
Of having a felon, ex-drug dealer.
Who's very public about it, you know? But it's really hard to measure ever how much someone is holding your past against you, because you never know what callbacks you didn't get or what jobs didn't consider you because they were like, no, we don't want someone who's always tweeting about prison, or no, we don't want someone who has a felony. Like, those are unknowable things.
Right. One of my favorite sections of the book was after the rehab, and you were like, I'm going to deal drugs now and not use them, period. I think it's funny because I know, like, you know, you wound up going to jail for selling heroin. Like, it's funny just to even hear you talk about that period, because you talk about it very kind of academically, and I can sell drugs and I won't do them, and making money. Can you walk us through that period?
Yeah, so I'd gone to rehab, like I said. After I'd been living on the streets, I went to rehab, and, you know, it didn't stick. I don't know. I was still just, I was just a very unstable person still. I was not in a place where, you know, I don't fault the rehab. Like, I wasn't in a place where that was going to happen at that point. And I stayed sober for maybe a year after rehab. And then, you know, I wanted to pay for school on my own and not have to be dependent on my parents. And I thought that the good way to do that, well, first was to start working at strip clubs. And I did that. And
were you a good dancer?
So,
as a figure skater, you have to dance, right?
I mean, it's very different, but what I was good at is that I was athletic, and I had I know this sounds weird, a lot of upper body strength. You don't expect that from skating, but, you know, you have to do a lot of off-ice training in the gym, and it was pairs that I had been doing, so I had a lot of upper body strength, which is good for pole tricks. So I was good at pole tricks. And, you know, and then, I mean, that was great. That helped me pay for some things. I got my first cell phone that way. And then I also wanted to try to pay for tuition, and I thought that selling drugs would be the way to do that. And it was not that long before I started using them, but like different drugs than what I'd done before. I did meth that time, and then I got into more other drugs. And, you know, I mean, it wasn't intentional self-destruction entirely. Like, some of that was something that I sort of fell into, but I was also still very unstable, and I would say that there was at least some pretty strong desire for self-destruction, like, lurking just under the surface.
Was there a big, like, drug culture within the stripper community? Like, where you're like, this is kind of the scene, so, like...
No, there wasn't. Because the places that I was working, like, one of them, almost all of the other people did not speak English. So I had, like, 2 friends that I went there with that I knew from college, but I didn't, like there wasn't a sort of culture there at those places because we literally just didn't speak the same language.
So I remember there being some sort of connection between the strip club and drugs, though, right? Wasn't there?
Yeah, we got, I don't remember if I can put this in there, but at one point we got pulled over on the way back, and I got arrested, but that was like, I think we'd had the drugs because there was like, you know, there was like, I don't know, one person that might have been one of the people who was driving us there. Like, yeah, there was one person that I think was getting coke, but this was not a big thing. It wasn't another one of the strippers either. I think it was one of the guys that was a regular. But some of this I is so foggy, but like I have these snippets of journals. So there's some parts that like when I talk about them in interviews, I'm like, I don't know, go fucking refer to the book because I researched it there. Like I had to reinvestigate my own past, right, to be accurate about some of these things. And I called almost everyone I knew that is still alive or that would still talk to me, and interviewed them, fact-checked memories, and unearthed journals and whatever public records I could find. And yeah, so it's funny because I think that even though it's a memoir and it's memories, like it's fact-checked in a way that my actual memories aren't.
Right. No, I get it. I do this show and I forget everything all the time. Did you read the David Carr book, Night of the Gun?
I did not. I know he did that, but I don't love reading addiction memoirs. I don't love reading prison memoirs.
The thing about that book is like the whole book is like kind of like an exercise in fact checking his life because he didn't remember anything. So it's like you did the same thing.
But you know what's remarkable? Like there are some places that are foggy, but I was surprised again and again by how accurate my memory was.
Right.
I would fact check things and I'd be like, wow, this is bullshit. This can't have happened. And then I'd call someone and they're like, no, that happened. Yeah.
So in that era, in the meth dealing era, you didn't even like the meth, but you were using a lot of it, right?
No, I did. I liked meth.
Okay.
But
what were your drugs then? You were saying meth, coke. What was the deal?
What was I selling, or was I like?
What was you selling, and what?
Kind of all,
you were selling what you were using.
I think I was down to try anything, at least once. The things I really didn't like were I was not a big fan of coke or crack, but I did them.
No, I didn't like them either. I love the way you described heroin too. Later, you were like, it finally was the warmth that, like, you weren't sure if you were finally getting better drugs or you finally knew what you wanted from it. And then
I have to say, when I started doing drugs, I feel like probably a lot of people listening to this would have the same experience. After all those years of like DARE classes, I thought that drugs would be better than they were. I was like, wait, this is it? Like, they definitely made drugs sound like they were going to be
more transportative than they were. Right.
Yes, far more mind altering than they actually were. Like I expected like the level of high you see in Fear and Loathing.
Right. Nothing really.
And I was like, wait, what? I just nodded out. I mean, okay, fine, I'll keep doing this, but what?
Did you do a lot of psychedelics?
Later, not at that point, but like, yeah. I mean, I did a lot of mushrooms. That was my psychedelic of choice.
The only drug that if I took a lot of acid, sometimes nothing was like Fear and Loathing, but if I took a lot of acid,
I had so many conversations about like how do you get that high? Like I literally don't
like a lot of doses and DMT.
It's the DMT. That's the
I did DMT after I was done doing heroin because somebody had it, and I was like, I just need to try this, and it wasn't like Fear and Loathing, and it was quick, which I really loved about it. But it was I liked it. It was profound. But after you're dealing and you hooked up with this guy Hootie, which I don't believe was his real name.
No, I didn't say it was his real name.
No, I'm just playing.
Of course not.
He
looked like the lead singer
from Hootie and the Blowfish. Yes, and you were selling with him.
Yes.
And was he on drugs before you met him?
He was older than I was and had definitely been doing coke. I don't think that he'd been doing heroin. No, he definitely hadn't been doing heroin. But he'd been doing coke, and I mean, I think he'd probably tried some other stuff. I think he'd been into acid at one point.
When did you start shooting up?
I mean, I don't know the year, but it's when I was living in New Jersey.
Do you remember the first time?
Yeah, and it's funny. This is like a memory I sort of unearthed in the process of writing this, because I just had to spend a lot of time sort of like thinking about details of things and making sure things were right. But yeah, I do remember the first time. I don't remember if I thought it was amazing, but I remember some of the circumstances around it, and I remember
Tell us the story. Tell us the story. Come on.
I mean, so I was in my shitty apartment in New Brunswick. Like, when I say shitty apartment, like, yo, this was like, people would joke that they felt like a cockroach coming in, because you would go down this like long, dark, unlit hallway, and then there was apartments on either side, and the walls were so thin that somebody drunkenly fell through one, like the Kool-Aid Man, and like just literally burst into one of the bedrooms, and it never got fixed. So there was just this fucking hole into the one room, and then a door like 6 feet later, and like the radiator like spewed black ash. And, you know, there was this huge gap underneath the door. You could just feel the wind blowing in.
Right.
It was, you know, a genuinely not good apartment, but I liked the location. And so this was I think the first place I got on my own. And I was in there, and I was, you know, I'd been dating Hootie by that point. And, I think we'd gotten in a fight or something, but I was alone at my place, and you know, someone helped me shoot up, and you know, it was on some, I don't know, dirty mattress in the back room or in the front room. Depends what you consider the front of that apartment, I guess. But yeah.
Yes. And did you start shooting up regularly after that? Were you always shooting up?
Yeah, I really, you know, this is also something I think a lot of people will relate to. I mean, I really like the needle part itself.
It's like science fiction. Like, you can put this thing and then it rushes into you. It's like superhuman. I mean, and I think figure skating is superhuman too. Like, I think that there's something I like that about a needle. I also liked how real it was, and how like that I was. I mean, it's like embarrassing to think about it now. How much I enjoyed, I don't know, the ritual, and also just like that now I was making this decision to go this far with this thing. Whereas when you're snorting heroin, it's like, well, I'm just snorting it. And once you're shooting it, you're making this decision that you don't turn back from.
Yeah, I mean, I think I also felt some sort of like, I don't know, weird sense of accomplishment, and like finding the vein, and like doing this objectively difficult thing. Correct. Like, you know,
the pseudo medical operation.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't know. I think that was part of it. I don't know. I haven't spent a lot of time in recent years unpacking that.
Well, that's what this show is for. So let's unpack it. And that's when I feel like your story gets nuts, right? Because that's when, and I'm going to talk about this as well as I can, but that's when you got into the sex industry. And I thought that the writing around that was like powerful. Really, can I read a section from the book?
Yeah, sure.
All right. It's like when I heard you read this, I was like, I gotta. Okay. The pay was not great. We took home no more than $150 an hour, and it was often a very full hour. There were rollicking bachelor parties, adventurous couples looking for a third, and shy nerds who just wanted a woman that wouldn't say no. But that was only some of the calls. There were also the calls in Fleabag motels with married men who cried the whole time. The calls with men who would demand head for an hour straight, unable to come after all the coke they'd done, and threatening to call and complain if you didn't comply. The men who insisted on keeping you there for 8 or more hours just staring in silence at your naked body without having sex, and insisting they would not pay till they were good and ready to be done. The men so old they were incontinent and would soak the bed in urine, accidentally peeing on you and in you before asking for a blowjob. The men who wanted you to put your hair in pigtails and pretend to be a child. The ones who wanted to pretend it was rape. Because it's rough, first of all, and I'm sorry you had to go through it. And it kind of, when I'm reading it, I'm kind of hearing what you said a minute ago about you did drugs because you didn't really want to live. So how did this, and you also, actually a paragraph before that talked about doing the sex work as a means for control. So how do these things, I mean, like, I went to see Jerry Stahl the other night do a reading, you know, the guy who wrote Permanent Midnight.
Okay.
And he said in the reading that he knew he was a successful writer when he was writing things that he wouldn't tell anybody, and that made him squirm. And it makes me squirm to read that in front of you. So how comfortable are you listening to it?
Love it. That is weird. It will probably always be just deeply weird to hear any passages of that read back, of any part of the book read back at me. Somebody quoted part of the book, a much lighter part,
Sorry,
at me the other day, and I was
apologize.
like, "Wow, that's kind of surreal." But yeah, one of the things that is interesting about hearing it read back, or even reading it back on my own, is that there are some pieces of this that, if you interrogated me on them now, I would have a really hard time answering some of these questions because I so purposely forget these things.
Right.
And this took a lot of concerted effort to literally, like, part of this writing process was literally just sitting there remembering. And I started in 2020 and continued through 2021. So this was in, like, the height of the pandemic. I was staying for part of this with two of my close friends who live in Austin, and I was in their spare room. And then for some of the really dark chapters, I was staying in this, like, little shack across the street that I was renting. And it was literally like a garden shed that somebody had put plumbing in. And it was a cute little place, but, like, I now think of it as, like, the place where I just sat there and
Unearth this horror stuff.
Remembered this shit, and it's stuff that, I know in my head, obviously, but I just, I've learned to forget, or to bury it enough that I'm not constantly thinking about it, obviously, and it takes me some effort to remember it. Like, I have completely lost track of how many times I was, raped or sexually assaulted in some way. And I know that there's some of them that are mentioned in there, but, even those, like, I know that there's things I've just buried and don't remember. And this was like a concerted, dark digging process. And it was literally sitting there alone in this shack, just replaying parts of my past in my memory until I remember other parts of it. And going down, like, Facebook rabbit holes to be
Right.
like, oh, this guy's friends with this guy. Oh, I remember that guy. That horrible thing happened or whatever. And so it's very weird when people read things back to me like that. Because, like, if you'd asked me to list all the worst tricks, I couldn't off the top of my head have spit those out. But when you're reading them, I'm like, oh, yeah,
I remember that
picture
guy.
That guy. Yeah.
Right.
It took a lot of memory, like, to get there, though.
And what do you think? Do you think why do you think you were willing to do the work, do sex work, at that point? Because you're dealing drugs. Are you still in school at that point?
Off and on.
Right.
I do, like, a semester on, a semester off. Like,
That's the craziest thing about your story. It's like you're in this situation, you're doing school, you're fucking this competitive figure skater, and then it's like, bang, you're in Cornell. Like, it's just, and then you're in prison. It's like, it's so many different lives kind of converging, and it's unusual for me. You remind me, to be honest with you, I went to this very nerdy school, and you remind me of somebody that I went to high school with. Like, you have this very...
I do not get that very often. It is not often that someone tells me I remind them of someone they went to high school with.
Well, I think you're very, very smart, and there's a lot of information compressed. You know what I mean? That's what I get from sitting with you and reading you and listening to you. Let's talk about how, because I'm not Oprah Winfrey here. I can't imagine it felt good to be in that situation. And it was, you broke up with Hootie, and his mother was like, you got to go back to school, right?
She suggested that I could try to transfer, which had not really been in my thought. Like, I just wasn't thinking about that. And she said that, and I was like, yeah, that would be the thing that will sort of, get me out of this. I didn't mean like, oh, that'll be the thing that'll get me sober. That wasn't.
No, it'll solve my problems.
Just meant like I'd get away from the end of this relationship that, I was pretty devastated about that ending. And, I'll just have a direction.
Before we even get there, what got you into the sex work in the first place? Exactly.
I mean, I started working at strip clubs.
Right.
And, you know, and then it was one of the girls I was at the strip club with had been doing foot fetish parties where guys, you know, pay to lick your feet.
Wow.
And I did some of those, and then, you know, ended up, I don't remember where I met the person that connected me to the escort service I was doing in New Jersey, but, you know, just sort of was like one thing led to another. Although actually, I guess previously when I was living on the street, I'd been doing street sex work too. So that wasn't, when I was doing it in New Jersey, that wasn't the first time.
Did you feel like, I mean, you came from this ridiculously good home with high achieving parents and parents who wanted so much for you. Like, what was there a sense of rebellion in all that? And even like the living on the street, sex work on the street, stripping, all of these things, was rebellion a part of it?
I mean, I don't think that was ever a primary thing. I think it was, in some cases, an added bonus, a nice little fuck you on the end. But I think a lot of it was more that I was just in a very self-destructive place. And, you know, a lot of this fed into that. But in terms of the sex work, I think that was the thing that I saw initially as a path to more independence. And,
right.
You know, I also felt like this was something that I had control. Despite being a young female in a, you know, world that is, you know, I think even more so than, you know, run by men, I felt like this was something where I could be in control.
Right. And after you left New Jersey and you got into Cornell, you always wanted to be in an Ivy League school. You always had intense ambitions, which you're accomplishing still. I mean, every defeat is just another kind of victory in the mail. Basically, was that the last of the sex work before Cornell?
Yes. I did not do sex work after I was at Cornell.
No, and that was something that because I went to school in Ithaca for years, and
honestly, that would have just been logistically challenging.
What, to do sex work in Ithaca?
Yeah, there's like, I mean, if you do sex work in a small town like that, you're gonna run into like your professors and shit.
Well, what about like how quickly did you get back into drugs in Ithaca? And I never found that. The only good drugs I ever found in Ithaca was good acid and really good weed. Like, I wasn't finding heroin in Ithaca.
Were you hanging out with the townies?
No, I wasn't. I got kicked out of Ithaca quickly. I didn't hang out with anybody. I hang out with a bunch of hippies. I had a band and I left. But break it down, because like that's where you get arrested with 4 ounces of heroin, which I've never even seen. So tell us about your Cornell experience and had you kicked heroin, or you didn't go there with a habit?
I did not go there with a habit. I took Suboxone and detoxed on my friend's couch before after I got into Cornell and I knew I was going to be moving. I detoxed and then, moved. And to the extent that I could, I was still trying to get high whenever I could. Whenever I was visiting New Jersey or...
You'd get dope.
Yeah.
What were you studying in Ithaca at Cornell?
I don't remember what major I declared that first semester, but at Rutgers I'd been doing genetics and philosophy double major, and that didn't quite translate at Cornell. Like, I think I couldn't do both as a transfer and graduate on time, so I ended up majoring in English, but that first semester it was not clear what I was going to... I think I was still taking like genetics and philosophy classes for the most part. And
in Ithaca, you were only doing dope if you went to Jersey. So like what?
Initially, yeah. And then, and then I met a dude who was, I don't know, selling.
Todd.
Yeah. Yes.
Was that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have to like not say names because I never remember whose name is changed and who isn't. But that one is real. That's his real name.
And Did you introduce him to dope, or was he like...
Oh, I definitely did not introduce
So he was already a junkie when you met him?
Yeah, he was not, I think, at that point. I don't think he had a habit at that point, but he had in the past, off and on. And at that point, I think he was more into crack. But the first time we hung out, we, smoked and then I think did mushrooms. Maybe maybe that first time. Yeah.
I once met this girl. Like, I had stopped using heroin, and I didn't realize that she had been a heroin addict, and she had stopped using heroin. And we met one night, and we did ecstasy together, and we hooked up. And then in the morning, she was like, "Oh, we should just do dope," and it was like done. You know what I mean? Like, we wound up on methadone together, and that was really like what propelled me into serious drug addiction. So when you meet a guy who's kind of like there and you're there, it's kind of like a jump starting of a battery or something.
Yeah, I mean, he was older, so he'd been running in those circles a lot longer.
How much older than you was he?
He must have been like 14 years older.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it jump started your addiction.
Yes, but I wouldn't. That feels like that's placing more of the blame on him than is fair.
Right. And he was kind of a scumbag too.
I mean, I try not to be an asshole.
Well, and if what I've inferred from the writing about this fellow Todd is that he's kind of a scumbag.
I'm honestly not even sure his mom would disagree with you. So.
Well, I mean, that's where it gets even. I mean, like Dopey Nation. Like, I know this has been a very heavy conversation, but this is where it gets much heavier. Where you're like, I want to kill myself, and he's like, go jump, and you do.
Yes.
And Ithaca's like the suicide capital of New York. Did you know that when you were there? Like that was a thing?
It's hard not to.
Okay.
It's hard not to know that.
Right.
But I was so new, I didn't even know where, and I had to ask someone to drive me to, the nearest gorge. And yeah, I did. I jumped. They said it was a 98-foot fall. Cops told me that at the time. And I think the fire department said it around that time in a press release or something. But I recently went back there and was looking at that bridge, and I was like, this is not 98 feet. This is cops exaggerating numbers again.
Right. And if you had known the actual distance, you probably wouldn't have done it there.
I probably wouldn't have done it there because you
didn't want to live.
Right. I especially wouldn't have done it with the risk of, not living and just being like seriously injured or something.
Whenever we drive across a bridge on vacation, my daughter asks, do you think I would die if I jumped off this bridge? And then every time. And then my wife always says, they did a study on people who jumped off bridges that survived, and 99.9% regretted jumping off the bridge when they're interviewed. Like she says this every time we drive out of New York. Did you feel that when you lived?
Not at the time.
You wished you had died?
Yeah. I was just mad I didn't die, yeah.
And how long did that last?
Until I didn't think about it anymore. Like, there wasn't a moment at which I started, like, I can think of, like, being like, oh, wow, I'm so...
happy to be alive.
Yeah.
Happy I didn't die.
I don't know. I'm still kind of existential about it in that I'm like, well, I don't know. I'd be dead. Like, I wouldn't have an opinion here.
I agree.
I
agree. I mean, she always says that the people who attempted suicide were so grateful that it wasn't over when they didn't die. That's just something that she said. And you're someone who did that, and then you didn't die, and you don't regret it.
I don't sit around thinking about, like, geez, I'm so grateful that I lived. And on the one hand, I hope that since then I've done good things with my life, that I've taken the dark parts of my past and done something positive with them and lived a life that has in that way been impactful. And those things wouldn't have happened if I died. So yeah, that's true. But at the same time, I don't sit around and think about, geez, I'm so grateful that I lived, because to me, the flip side of that is asking myself all these sort of what ifs and could have beens. Like, where would I be if I didn't do dope? Where would I be if I...
Do you ask those questions ever?
No, I really don't. And I think that's part, like, the fact that I just don't go there, I think is part of why, part of why I don't sit around and think a lot about, like, am I so grateful that I
didn't die?
Lived, you know? Also, honestly, like, I'm just generally an anxious human. I have quite enough anxiety about, like, today. I don't need to also start, like, coming up with ways to obsess about alternate yesterdays.
No, I get it. Do you ever feel suicidal still?
No, I think there were definitely, I take that back. At the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
That was a really dark time for me. I mean, it was for a lot of people, obviously. For me, and I wrote about this at the time, I did an essay on this, the fear of lockdowns, which, I mean, I was, I'm pro-science. I was not opposed in theory to whatever is needed to, whatever seemed to be needed at that point to deal with the pandemic. But I was, like, on a personal level, very scared of them because it felt like prison, like solitary, like being told you have to stay in this space, and obviously it wasn't, especially in Texas, nearly as strict as I thought it would be. But I don't know, it felt so apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a dark time for me. Mainly, I think, because I got so panicked about this idea of being, more or less like imprisoned in your house, like, which I know I've been in prison. I know it's not the same. Like, you have a phone, you have the internet. I had a job. Like, I was mostly staying with my best friend for the first few months of the pandemic. We had, like, her dog, like, had all these things you don't have in prison. But there was just something that snapped in my mind about being told you're stuck here, just like how prison tells you you're stuck here and you can't leave. And I don't know, that just really awakened this sort of, like, deep-seated panic for me. And trauma. I was just really losing track of time. And I felt, looking back, that whole time period feels like extremely unhinged for me, and to a degree that I didn't think was possible. I didn't think that this long later that I would go to that dark place, or that I would be that sort of unhinged about it. But, I mean, I didn't, obviously. I didn't kill myself. I didn't, start doing drugs. Like, and I think part of that was because, I know that there's people that care about me that would be hurt by that. And part of that is because of, the work that I do, like writing about prisons. Things were so dire in prisons, and there were so many prisoners and their families reaching out to me with, these just heartbreaking, really dire stories. And it felt so urgent to be able to
be a conduit for them.
Yeah, to be able to tell those stories and, help hold these prisons accountable for how incompetently some of them were handling the pandemic.
Right. I can't imagine, like, what you're uncovering, you know what I mean, in terms of, like, and also the advocacy work, like these are people that need help, and you were one of them, and now you get to serve your community, which is kind of what I like to pretend that's what I'm doing. Really what I'm doing is I always wanted to have a talk show, and I get to have a talk show, and I want it to be entertaining, and I want it to be fun. Like, that's my agenda, because I'm self-centered and sick. But how did you wind up with 4 ounces of heroin? How did that happen? That's a lot of heroin.
I was dating a guy who had connections to get fronted more than I could have otherwise afforded.
Were you selling the dope in Ithaca?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's the heroin scene in Ithaca like?
I mean, I can't speak to now, but then, there was a subset of the towny druggy scene that did heroin, but it wasn't big. Like, it was a decent number of people. Prices were jacked up. It was like twice what it would cost in the city. And, you know, and yeah, I don't know. That's what it was then. I don't really know what it's like now.
Did you feel at home on the town?
You know what? I know you'll understand this. Like, so many of my friends from then have died.
Yeah.
And, like, not then. They died later, you know, in the past few years.
Well, I'm sure back then it wasn't fentanyl, and now it is. And what was I going to say? Did you feel like you fit in on the townie scene in Ithaca?
I mean, more than I felt like I fit in at Cornell.
Yeah. Because you're obviously like a Cornell brainiac, but you're hanging out in the junky townie world. And the townie world is like throwback, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I definitely didn't fit in with your average Cornell student either.
Right, because you're like, you have this...
I'd been through a very different set of experiences also by the time I got to Cornell. Like, because I'd already been living on the street before that.
And had done this crazy sex work. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I could have done this whole interview just about the juxtaposition between being a sex worker on the street and an Ivy Leaguer. Like, how weird was it to show up at Cornell, or were you like, I knew I should be here? Like, I found that juxtaposition, and then from there to prison. Like, it's fucking crazy.
I don't know. I don't even have an answer to that. Is that a question?
No, it's just, you know, it's an observation.
It's a statement with a question mark on the end, isn't it?
Well, you're a better journalist than I am. So, I mean, like, at what point did you fit in, or you never fit in the Ivy League in your mind?
No, I never. I never fit in. I mean...
Did you ever go back and talk there? I just could see that. I think you have to go back and talk at Cornell.
I have.
Okay.
Well, and when I got out, I lived there. You know, and when I got out of prison, I definitely became a part of the community. You know, townies, but not the townie druggies. Because I was doing journalism, and I was on a couple nonprofit boards. Like, I had a network of people I knew there, and it felt like, you know, like I had community, like I had a place that felt like home. But yeah, I still go back some, and I'm actually going back in a few weeks.
That's cool. I haven't been back to Ithaca since like 1994.
I was there like 2 months ago, because I said I went to that bridge and looked at it, and I was like, it's not as tall as they said.
Right. And how, I mean, like, this whole interview also should have been about prison. One of the exciting parts of the book to me, because again, I'm very shallow, and the exciting part to me was where you show up in prison with all these drugs in your ass. Like, how much drugs did you have in your ass when you got to prison?
Probably a couple grams.
I mean, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And
in jail. This was jail.
Right, in Tompkins
But
County.
Yeah, yes.
And how long did you stay high?
I mean, a couple days.
And you shared?
Yes.
You had friends?
Yes, I did after that.
Right. And were they loyal to you after that?
I mean, there was always some catty fighting. It was only like 6 or 8 people in that cell block, though. So, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to be loyal or disloyal to, you know. Some people were just, I don't know, cattier, and some people were always just kind of calm. Like, it's not the same as if you had like a 120 person dorm where there's real politics and loyalties and shit. Like, it just doesn't translate the same with 6 or 8 people.
And this is probably not fair, but in my observations as a reader, it seems like, and this is, you're probably not going to like this comment with a question at the end of it. Like, you really got rehabilitated in prison. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of found your way out of your situation in your time in prison, like through navigating politics, through navigating people, through the counselors, like Mr. S guy, and all of these scenarios. It seemed to do well for you. You know, you actually can't. No, not true.
No, I think almost anyone who does better after prison does better in spite of prison, not because of it.
I'm not saying it's because of prison. I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying you needed to go either, but do you think that the experience of getting taken out of the world, put into correctional facility and coming out was good for you?
No. So here's the thing. I think that I was at a point where I was ready to be done with it. And, whether that had been
done with drugs, you mean?
Yeah, I think at that point, I think rehab would have worked. I think, prison. I think moving to a different city. Literally I was at a point where I was done, and any number of sort of changes could have been the thing that would have set me in a different direction. And I think if I'd gotten arrested a year earlier, I absolutely would have kept doing drugs in prison because, I could get heroin delivered to my bedside in prison. So I don't think that I got sober because of prison. And I also think that prison in so many ways just damaging to one's mental health and traumatizing and does not do much to set people up for life after prison. So was prison good?
I didn't say it was. That wasn't my question.
To...
My question wasn't, is prison good? My question was, I guess I also really want to know in terms of when you stopped using in prison, how do you think that psychic change happened? Because I'm not implying that prison was good. I'm only implying that might have been good for you to have been removed from the world for a period of time. As a reader.
Well, and I'm just saying, I think that there's any number of other things that could have achieved that goal that would have been far less destructive
and traumatic.
Yeah. So sorry, what was the question here?
The question was describe what really presented the psychic change of finding recovery in prison.
So I think there's a few moments of clarity, if you will. But one of them, I think, was when the guy I was dating at that point came in to visit. And
Alex.
Uh-huh. And
the guy you married in prison.
Yeah, because I was a dumbass.
Why did you marry him in prison?
I married him in jail.
Okay. I only did 2 nights in the tomb, so I'm not experienced.
So you know what? For that one, I am just going to say read the book. That is a longer answer. But yes. So where were we going with Alex?
We were talking about the psychic change.
I'm so fucking tired right now. I am.
Is this the worst interview you've ever had? Am I the worst interviewer that's ever interviewed you?
But we have now been talking about dark shit and trauma for long enough that my brain is getting a little fuzzy.
I know. I'm sorry. But now we're getting to the good part where you get out of it. Now we're in the home stretch. It's all downhill from here. How do you think? Because you stopped using drugs. What year?
In 2010.
And what do you think? By
So I think that there's a few things. One of them was when Alex came, continued to come visit me, and he was. One of the times in particular that I remember, there was a few times like this, but there was one in particular where, he came in trying to tell me that he wasn't high. And I know the difference, obviously. And he's got clear track marks, pretty fresh ones, that he tried to tell me were because he fell into a pot plant.
How does he even say that? How does that quote?
But we both said shit just as dumb.
I know, but that's
you
just.
did too,
but it's such a weird. I would never say I fell into a pot plant. Maybe I got cut or I picked a scab. Maybe I would say that. I wouldn't say I fell into a pot plant.
It was a particular.
I was mauled by a porcupine.
Right, exactly. There are that would have been. I would have been okay, at least points for creativity.
Right. At least there's points.
But I was wow, there's. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, the pot plant that attacks you only on your veins. Cool. But I was sitting there watching him clearly high, telling all the same ridiculous kinds of lies that that we all tell to try to cover up being high, and I was just that is embarrassing, and I don't want to be that anymore. I don't want to be lying to people that care about me and just embarrassing myself. It was seeing it sober from the other side that I was like, wow, I'm done with this. I don't need to be this anymore. And there was a few different moments like that, but that was one that definitely stood out.
And like, I mean, I found for myself when I got sober, like, I think I had just hit a point where I had read somewhere about aging out of addiction, and I was much older than you were when I got sober, and I wasn't in prison. Do you think it was your age played a part of it?
Mm-hmm. I was 26 at that point, which is around the time that starts to happen, that people can start to age out of addiction. I know that wasn't true from you, from what you just said.
No, I didn't age out.
But statistically, that is also the age at which people start to age out of crime. And, addiction often goes hand in hand with that.
I think I'm just historically incredibly immature. So maybe at 41, I was kind of 26 in some way.
But yeah, I do think that was part of it. I mean, I think that's part of why I was ready to be done with it, is that I had gotten to a point where, things had just been bad enough for long enough, and I was ready to be done with it, partly because I was, aging out of that. And, I mean, I guess I probably was at a point where I was ready to stop being so aggressively self-destructive.
Well, I'm glad. And it's, I mean, like, I loved the book, and I really recommend Corrections in Ink. And I'm sorry, like, I'm usually like such a top-notch interviewer, and I'm sorry, like, I don't think I don't think I was the CNN today for you. So I want to apologize to you for that. And I want to thank you, though, for coming here and unearthing horrible stuff. How do you feel now? Do you feel joy being on this book tour? Do you feel joy being this accomplished writer who gets to advocate for people in prison?
It's very surreal right now.
Where's your joy? Tell me where your joy is, please. That's not usually part of Dopey, but I want to know from you. Where do you find joy?
So, in general, I run, and that is something that...
Did you run this morning?
No, I only did I did 2 miles.
Where'd you go?
To Central Park.
Nice. Did you have fun?
Yeah, and it's so nice, since I live in Houston, it's so nice to be, I don't melt outside. I can run here, which is nice. But I had to cut it short because I had an interview, so, I mean, I'll try again tonight or tomorrow morning.
You're back to back today.
Yeah, yes, which is part of why, you asked, how am I feeling about this tour? And I feel like this is something I will, I don't know, I'll feel more about afterwards. But in the moment, it's so much. But there's been a few really cool moments so far. One of which was when on Pub Day, I had a book event in Houston, and Chris Tomlinson, who's in the end of the book, was the one interviewing me at, the indie bookstore in Houston. And one of the people in the audience who stands up at the end raises his hand and, says he's a prison dentist. And I'm like, oh, fuck. This guy's going to hate me. He's about to tell me how terrible I am for writing bad things about the prisons and all. And no, he wanted to tell me how much he appreciated my work, and how much he appreciated me writing about how bad the dental care had been, because he was like, we didn't like not giving people dentures either, and it was so nice to, have someone writing about it and how they had always looked forward to my stories. And I mean, that was a really cool moment.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm sure another one of the most amazing moments was where I read you back that very, very depressing part of your book.
It's so weird. It is so weird to be quoted back at myself.
Listen, you're amazing, and you've done something really, really important for a lot of people, and I really appreciate you coming on and reliving some dark shit and facing it. I do. I appreciate you.
It's good to meet you.
Finally. Good to meet you too. Right on. Thank you. All right. So that was author figures. She's a lot like you. She's an author. She's not an equestrian, and she doesn't give advice. And you weren't a prisoner.
No.
But besides that, you guys are like two peas in a pod.
Well, there were some similar threads in sort of like the overachieving,
right?
And then
Ivy Leaguing.
Really?
Did you Ivy League?
No.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to USC, and I dropped out and went back and dropped out and went back and dropped out and then finished at the new school.
I took harmonica lessons at the new school.
I remember that.
All right, get to your notes.
All right. So yeah, I thought it was interesting, like when she talked about, or you asked her a question about the through line from like figure skating to drugs, like sort of that, like the intensity with which you have to pursue something like figure skating at that level. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I do think that there's something there. Our stories diverge a little bit, you know.
Horseback riding and figure skating are very similar in very different ways.
Yes.
Because they're like both physically intense.
Yes.
And like they're like elite kind of sports.
Yes.
Like usually like people with dough do them.
Because they cost a lot of money to do.
Like rink fees, Zamboni fees are a real problem.
Real killer.
The Zamboni is like the coolest thing that's ever been built.
Sometimes do you ever
Why do you think they called it the Zamboni?
maybe the person who invented it?
Leon Zamboni.
Sure.
Amazing.
Do you ever like fantasize about like, I don't know, sometimes I fantasize about like running away from home and like just starting a life, like doing some weird job somewhere and like living in an apartment by myself. And one of
Zamboni driving.
Yes. I'm like, what if I just moved to some shit town and I was like the Zamboni person?
I mean, I think that's incredible. I feel like you see less figure skating rinks in the world, though.
Yeah, probably.
Like when I was a kid, I mean, I went to camp in New Hampshire, and I'm sure I've talked about it a lot on the show.
Jewish camp?
No, it wasn't Jewish camp, but they had a huge hockey and figure skating component, and just the smell of the bags was so disgusting.
Oh, the skate bags? Or the hockey bags?
Just the gear just smelled so. It's so like urine-y and sweaty, but like that's because they're fucking out there busting their asses on the ice. So like, but there was a certain mystique, and then there was also that great Tom Cruise movie, Youngblood. You ever see Youngblood?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You can smell the urine. Was it Tom Cruise? Maybe it wasn't.
I don't think it was Tom Cruise.
It should have been. But Youngblood, great hockey movie. Fuck, why are we talking about hockey movies?
Because it's adjacent to figure skating.
Well, I would like to drive a Zamboni. I would certainly like to ride a Zamboni. I think in Youngblood they do.
Yeah, that seems fun. Right? It's probably not as much fun as
it's
we
very,
think it is.
very
It's so slow.
But it's what else you got? What else you got?
Okay, so I also, when you guys were talking about DMT, I never did DMT.
That's a yet. I don't think she did DMT. I'm like transfixed with DMT, and I'll tell you why. I didn't do DMT in my whole drug using time, but then after I stopped doing drugs, I was in Narcotics Anonymous, and a friend of mine invited me to his house. I feel like we went drinking or something. Like I was drinking in NA for whatever reason. And then he was like, "Oh no, he just called me. He told me he got DMT." And I'm like, "I'm coming over." And I was like, "I'm doing it," you know?
Yeah.
Because that was the one thing that
you
like,
hadn't done.
Well, I hadn't done a lot of things,
Right.
but I really wanted to do DMT because there were classic stories of Haight Ashbury and Jerry Garcia and the crew smoking DMT in the attic of the house. And the way they described it, I was like, this is something I need to try. And he would get it off this very Jewish keyboard player, and he was in a Grateful Dead cover band called Deadstein. And he was like a film editor, and he always had drugs everywhere. And he was like a minor league chemist, but he always had like shattered and weird like THC compounds and every like weird psychedelic compounds, and we would jam with him. He was a sick piano player, great singer. And I was like, I ran to Alan's house to smoke DMT with him. And I'm sure I've told this story on Dopey at some point, but I'm going to tell it again because you didn't hear it. And we smoked DMT, and it was good. You know,
good.
Like it lasts for like 15 minutes.
What does it feel like?
It feels like it's like LSD times a bunch, but compounded into 15 minutes without really thinking about anything. Like you have this like heightened experience, and you have hallucinations.
Okay.
And everything is heightened, but it's not introspective. And
So it's not like ketamine where you're just like, you sink.
no,
Right.
no. It's like kind of the opposite of ketamine. for me. And I mean, I did it one time.
Right.
And I wound up looking at a painting, like probably for 15 minutes, and the painting danced.
Right.
Like to a beat. And then I came down and I got stoned with Alan, and we went to, there's a famous macrobiotic Japanese restaurant.
Suen.
Right. But the one on the west side. You know, there's one on the east side and there's one on the west side. And
Well, there was the one forever, which is really close to my house, on 13th between University and 5th, but that closed down. Now there's one, and then there was one like on the edge of Soho, like on Varick Street or something.
that's where we went.
Yeah.
We went to the one on the edge of South,
Yeah.
but the one that I always used
There's
to go
one
to
in the East Village, yeah.
was the one in the East Village. And so like the come down off of the DMT like lasted forever, but it felt kind of good. It was like that weird sort of twilight post tripping, and we ate macrobiotic food, and I felt very like important.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it's good that it doesn't last a long time. I remember like I often had like real weird trips with inanimate objects when I did LSD. And
When's the
mushrooms.
last time you think you did LSD?
Oh my God, it was like I was in my 20s.
And you're still tempted to do the Gabor Mate
I mean,
ayahuasca?
tempted in the sense that like under the right circumstances with the right person, like if Dr. Mate was like, Aaron, let's go, and
I've read your book, and you were my candidate.
I'm gonna oversee your whole experience, then I would probably do it. I don't think I mean I wouldn't be like, if you were like, oh, let's go do ayahuasca.
If I was like, let's go to Washington Square Park and buy some ayahuasca.
No, I wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't want to do it?
No.
All right, what else you got in the Keri Blakinger notes?
That
offends me somehow. Like, why would I actually have some ayahuasca right
well,
here?
many reasons. Number one, I wouldn't want to be involved in your relapse.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
But what if it wasn't? What if it was a spiritual journey?
If somebody was going to guide, if you were like, look, Dr. Mate is going to take you and I, and he's going to take us on this journey, then I would say yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going on any journey anytime
All
soon.
right.
I need a few more years.
I liked what you guys talked about, like with the ritual, like how much of, and I was thinking about that, like there was so much of drug use for me that was about the ritual because I had my life so compartmentalized. So
You did.
so compartmentalized. So the ritual of drug use sort of mirrored the ritual of compartmentalizing the different parts of my life too. So I really related to that. And then I thought about the thing that you guys talked about, like aging out of addiction. Like there is that thing of like the adolescent brain really doesn't mature until you're like in your mid to late 20s. And obviously many people use drugs long past that. But I do think that I don't know. I think that like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. I feel like
Shouldn't
there was
say what?
something.
No, what shouldn't
Well,
you
I was
say?
going to say, like, I think that maybe there was some part of like my brain finally like maturing a little bit that made it easier for me.
I know, but how old were you?
29, 28, 29.
Right. She was
29.
like 27. I was
Yeah.
41.
Yeah, I know.
But I think like I'm probably just immature.
Maybe. But were you hardcore that whole time? Like, when was like, because I know like towards.
I was hardcore fucking the whole time. No, I was hardcore from 24 till I don't know, fucking.
No, I guess you were. Yeah. What am I talking about?
I was pretty bad until probably 2011. So like, what is that? If I got sober, I guess the last 3 or 4 years I was not using heroin.
Right. That's what
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
is that you had aged out of it enough where you were like,
I probably have like 10 or 11 years since I've done heroin
Right.
now, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And then I think I even have, and I only did it the one time. So I think
Right.
I have like 13 years since I was addicted to heroin.
Right.
Which I feel very good about.
Yeah.
Hold on. So yeah, the ritual. I mean, I think that the thing in this talk that was very hard for me was the suicide. That she attempted the suicide and wasn't particularly grateful when she didn't die.
Right.
That was
right.
that was hard.
I mean, I think I certainly felt that when I was younger and attempted suicide. I did not feel grateful that it didn't work.
When did you attempt suicide?
When I was a kid, like with Tylenol.
How many did you take?
I have no idea.
How old were you?
Young. Like this is like pre-heroin.
So like, how old are we talking?
Somewhere between the ages of 8 and 13.
Right.
So I was probably like 9 or 10.
See, I think you're incredibly well adjusted considering the life you've lived.
You know what?
It's really,
So many people say that.
It's pretty amazing if you think about it.
I mean, yeah, yes. And also, like, you're meeting me at a time in my life when I'm not as crazy. I had this, maybe this isn't a discussion for this show, but I've had this discussion.
You should never say that.
I know. Okay, I'll just say it anyway. So, like, my husband and I were having this discussion. He's like, sometimes I wish I had, like, known you then, like, because you were, like, just
so
because of
fun.
Like, yeah, like that it would be more fun. And I was like, no, I'm like, you don't, because you get all the other shitty parts that come along with that. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I mean, people that this is not, this is because I've had like, 19 and a half years of recovery.
Well, I mean, it's like the reason I don't take ayahuasca, the reason I don't smoke DMT, the reason I don't use marijuana recreationally is because I've cultivated a life that I really enjoy. And I am not certain that I could still enjoy my life with any of those things in it. I've never experienced using drugs and having a nice life at the same time. And I don't want to risk it.
Right.
I like the life I have.
Right.
Like, I mean, and that's why, like, I had that old, I'll relapse when I'm 75. I'll smoke bong hits and listen to the Allman Brothers because I'll have cultivated enough life that I can unreel a little bit of it then. But I'm not in any hurry to unreel or unravel my life.
Mine's a little bit different. Like, I feel pretty confident that I could do a hallucinogen and it would not derail my life. I mean, you should never say never, but I feel pretty confident in that. My thing is that, like, what I'm bummed about, and we talked about this a few weeks ago after surgery, like, I won't get that relapse. Like, if I feel like I used up all my opiate receptor fun points. Like, that fucking sucks. Like, if I, at 90 years old, I'm like, let me go out in a blaze of fentanyl glory, it's not probably going to be like that for me, which is good. But then it's also kind of like, wow, that's sad.
Well, there's something sad about it. And we never released that episode, I'm realizing. So nobody even heard about your surgery, your experience with opiates.
Because it didn't record.
No, it recorded. We just didn't release it.
We didn't release it.
I don't know why. There's something happened. Something else happened. I don't know.
All right.
That was the dark side episode.
Oh, we haven't released that yet.
No.
Okay.
But we're going to erase that front. So listen, I'm going to put that talk on Patreon now.
Okay.
So if you want to hear Erin talk about when she was done with opiates and when she got her thyroid surgery, go to www.patreon.com/Dopey
what a bummer
Podcast. But so what you're saying is, I mean, this is a dangerous thing to be saying. Because what you're kind of saying is you're relapse proof.
No, I don't think I don't think anybody is relapse proof, but I feel like, again, it would have to be under the right circumstances.
So here's the $1 million question. And like, cause and spoiler alert, Erin got her thyroid removed, got a shitload of opiates, didn't really enjoy it
at all.
So what does a relapse look like for you?
I mean, a relapse to me would be something like if I chose to do hallucinogens with my husband or in a therapeutic setting, I wouldn't consider that a relapse.
Fine, I'm with you. Yeah.
So a relapse to me would be me.
What's a relapse?
A relapse would be me doing cocaine. A relapse for me would be like, I mean, I never had binge drinking, but I guess like if I suddenly started binge drinking, a relapse would certainly be if I started taking opiates recreationally.
But you didn't like opiates. Do you have because you had that dangling feeling that like if you did opiates, it would trigger like that you'd like them, and that didn't happen.
I mean, I didn't. I thought that like no, because I've had a few surgeries, so I knew that like I wasn't really worried about that being triggered. That said, because I'm aware, because of my history, every surgery I've had in the last 19 and a half years, I am very aware of how long I've been taking the opiates, that I'm taking them as directed, that other people know that I'm taking them. Like there's no like secrecy around it.
But I guess what I'm saying is like for me, right? I haven't had surgery. Like I haven't had an opiate in a long time. And I think that when or if I get hurt and I need an opiate, that I'll enjoy it.
You might.
Whatever. You found that you didn't enjoy it.
No, but also the last couple of years of my using, I was not enjoying it. Like it wasn't giving me the relief that it used to give me. And that was upsetting. because I felt, and the other thing too is that, and
That's
you'll hear this in the
interesting.
Patreon, is that like it makes me, there's something about it that even if I felt a little bit of the physical high, I feel instantly really depressed. It makes me feel, I have it, the association with being dope sick, like that sort of like association happens so quickly. So the second that I feel like, oh, they've just given me Dilaudid after surgery and I feel it entering my bloodstream, it's like the next thought is like being like the next visceral reaction is being dope sick. And I kicked so many times cold turkey that I can't disconnect the two.
No, I know what you mean. It's like every time that's basically why I stopped using, because I knew I couldn't use without getting sick, and I didn't want to get sick, and
No,
there was
it
no way to juggle it. So that's the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that it's not going to be an opiate relapse, I don't think, because you don't like them anymore.
No, I mean, I guess maybe I would go and be like, oh, I'm just going to like smoke a bunch of pot now or something. I don't know.
What about crack? You used to love crack.
I hated crack. I just couldn't stop doing it. No, I have no desire to ever do crack again. That was the worst period of my life, was that relapse with Jack in the book where we were smoking crack. It was awful.
Didn't you smoke crack on a plane in the book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now I have some questions. We haven't asked Aaron, but like,
Okay.
I don't need to jump into the Ask Aaron,
No.
because there's questions I haven't asked you.
Yes.
That I've wanted to ask
Okay.
you. The most important question is, like, you were at rehab and it came out kind of through a bunch of different stories with Elliott Smith and Rick James.
Yes.
And I don't think we've talked enough about that.
We haven't really talked about it at all.
We should have led with that. So, like, what the fuck was that? What was that like? We never even had a personal conversation about it. Really?
Yeah, we have.
Not enough.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, I went to rehab in LA and
And they're both dead now,
they're
which is
both
why she can
yes.
talk about it.
Went to rehab in LA, and there were a lot of musicians that came through this rehab. And
Was Flavor Flav there too?
No, I worked with Flavor Flav.
I know,
a bunch.
that's my next question.
So they were both there. They were both really nice. They were both, I mean, I was only there for a couple days with Elliott Smith because he was like ready to leave. And then he came back to like some outpatient groups.
How soon after was he dead?
2 years.
Did you talk to him at all?
After?
No, at any point.
Oh, in rehab. Yeah.
What would you talk about? Were you like, yo, the dope was really fire. I used to smoke crack on a plane.
No,
What did you talk to Elliott Smith about?
No, I mean, we talked about like, a lot of us talked about music, not even in relation to him, just music in general. Everybody
there.
there
Damn,
were
Elliott
like,
Smith, you've got a really good voice, but your shit is so depressing.
I love his shit. But, and Rick James was very paternal.
Do you talk to Rick James a lot?
Yes, he was the first night that I was there.
Did he ever say cocaine is a hell of a drug?
No, you asked me that the first time I was on the show. No, he never said that. Because you guessed that it was the first time that I came on Dopey, which is almost a year ago. You asked me, you were like, is that Rick James? And I said, yeah. And then.
But I didn't ask you like thinking it was Rick James. I ask everybody on the show when they mention something, I think of the most outlandish person
And
it
it
could
was.
be. And it turned out to be Rick James. And I swear to God, every week since then, because I am the dude who brings the acoustic guitar to rehab.
Right.
I am that guy.
They were them too. I mean, that was the thing.
So
is that my first night?
What would they play together?
I don't even honestly, I don't remember that. I do not remember what they were playing.
Did they play Hotel California?
No, you asked me that before too.
Did they play?
No.
Did they play California Dreaming? No.
I don't remember what they played because I was in the way this rehab was set up, there were like little bungalows everywhere. And this is the thing that is funny is that so I was in like this main bungalow where the detox was. I met them all outside smoking cigarettes and they all kind of introduced themselves.
What kind of cigarettes did they smoke?
I don't remember. I was smoking Parliaments at the time.
Can I tell you that when I've been in rehab, I knew every brand that every
everyone
person
smoked?
Yes.
Everyone was just smoking whatever they had. A lot of people smoked Marlboros, I remember, in rehab, but I had an American Spirits. A lot of people had American Spirits
I found
at that
them
time.
to be very frustrating.
American Spirit smokers or American Spirits?
Both, but
because they're
mostly-
slow burning.
it's like-
because there's less chemicals. Do you know what I used to love? What I loved to smoke. That's one thing. Like once in a blue moon, I will have a cigarette.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
When's the last time you had a cigarette?
The last time I had a cigarette was when I was in LA for my book event in LA. Right after my book came out, my friends had a party afterwards for me, and it was right before the country shut down. It was like one of the last social things, and I had a cigarette.
What kind of cigarette?
Whatever. I think it was a Marlboro because I bummed one off.
A Marlboro Red?
No, it was a Gold.
Marlboro Gold.
I think.
I don't support that. So you
I
don't
didn't
remember
like Marlboro Reds.
You don't remember a song that
I don't.
that they played.
I really don't.
That's really what I wanted to know.
I'm sorry. It's really disappointing. They were also there with somebody whose name I'm pretty good with names. I cannot remember his name.
Was it Beck?
No. He was a country singer who I'd never heard of, but apparently also had a father who was a famous country singer. And it wasn't like Waylon Jennings or anything. It wasn't anybody.
It wasn't Shooter Jennings?
No, it wasn't because I would have known that name. I didn't know their names, but I guess in the country world they were names.
Was it Lucas Nelson?
I have no idea. I really literally have tried, and I never, because in my journals from that time, I gave everybody code names in my journal. Like I was like the football player, the country singer. So I'm like, why didn't I write down their fucking names? So he's the one who I think actually had the guitar, and they were one of the bungalows on this on the grounds of the hospital. It had a wider door than all the other bungalows because W.C. Fields used to come there and dry out. So it was the W.C. Fields bungalow. And I just remember being in the detox ward, and I had grape soda, which funny you mentioned Flavor Flav because that is on his rider when he works.
Welch's?
Welch's grape soda.
It's a quality soda.
It's pretty good.
Very sweet.
Anyway,
I can taste it right in my mouth.
I remember them I just remember hearing that they were sitting on the porch of the W.C. Fields bungalow playing music, and I was like, it just felt like this weird version of druggy camp.
It's awesome.
It was good. I mean, I felt like I was so relieved to be at rehab.
I wish that we could get a recording because Rick James's first band was with Neil Young.
Yeah, that's right.
The Mina Birds. And they were signed to Motown.
Yeah.
And I think Rick James, I like Rick James, and I think he could have done a lot more stuff than he got to do. Mm-hmm. And did he talk about burning the woman and keeping her hostage and all that stuff?
No.
That's a crazy story.
He was talking about stuff happening in his life currently.
Like
you
what?
know what I mean? I don't even really remember. I mean, just whatever the reason he was there. I mean, he was.
Had Chappelle's Show come out? You don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. This was February of 2001.
We're gonna save Flavor of Love for another time. Let's do a quick
Okay.
Ask Aaron.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, did you see any of these YouTube videos of the Newport Folk Festival?
With Joni Mitchell?
Yeah.
I didn't watch any of them, but I've seen them floating around on the internet.
Oh my God. I've been watching them this morning, and I guess she was there.
Yeah.
And Paul Simon was there.
Wow.
And I'm an old white Jewish guy, and I was never a big Joni Mitchell fan.
Neither was I.
But it's fucking emotional stuff.
That Blue, what's that song?
The Case of You.
No, it's that album Blue.
Blue.
Yeah.
This shit is. I'm listening to I'm watching all these YouTube videos. Fucking. I guess it's probably the end. I never went to the Newport Folk Festival.
Neither have I. My dad
I
lives
know.
there.
But Paul Simon's with this band and playing the boxer, and the whole stage is all these whoever they are. I don't know who they are, but they're good.
Old folk people.
Well, no, they're young folk. It's like Lucas Nelson is Willie Nelson's incredibly handsome son.
Yeah.
And and then there's all these very talented people. There's this guy Jerry Douglas who plays, I guess, dobro really well, and they're singing the boxer, and Paul Simon is 80, and I got very emotional on the train. It's I'll show you the video. It's very emotional. And the Joni Mitchell shit, she looks like she's about to die.
Right.
But she has this husky voice now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very emotional. And Brandy Carlisle, I guess, is in love with her,
Mm-hmm.
and Brandy Carlisle is singing all of the high Joni Mitchell shit, and it's It's pretty remarkable because they're they're going to die soon.
I know.
But anyway, you don't care about Joni Mitchell and Paul Simon.
I mean, I don't not care about them.
I think it's you closer to not caring.
No.
But let's go to the Ask Aaron.
Okay, so this is something that happened. It's not an official Ask Aaron question, but I got a friend of mine had tweeted something asking if she should preemptively drug test her kid.
Okay.
And the idea being that if her kid was in a situation where they were offered drugs, they could say, well, my parents drug test me, so I can't. And I said that this was a terrible idea.
Hold on, say that again.
She basically saw it in this way that if she drug tested her kid, then they wouldn't be lying when they were under peer pressure and they said, I can't use or I can't try that or whatever because my parents drug test me.
Right, it's a good excuse for them not to try using.
Right. So I said, and pretty much everyone was like, this is a terrible idea. Terrible idea.
Oh, like as a preventative measure?
There's no...
Every month we give you the
There's
the
no...
test?
Yeah, their child is not... There's no indication that their child has ever even tried anything. And I'm like, it just sets up like such a terrible dynamic between a parent and a child, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't think it ever works for a parent to play prison warden with their child. It never works.
No, but I mean, like, I would be interested in testing my kids if they had pinned eyes and were a fucking disaster and telling me they weren't using. Then I would be like, let's do a test. You know,
but then what do you do with that?
You send them to fucking treatment. Mm-hmm. You know, you hit the road. Can't stay here. You know, what's that thing?
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
I mean, if you know, God forbid, one of my kids showed signs of opiate abuse and denied it, and they were a fucking wreck, nodding out in the house, eyes pinned, disaster, and they denied it, I'd be like, let's take a test.
Yes, but...
You wouldn't take a test at that point?
Well, just listen to me for a second. I've heard you talk about this before.
I don't feel like I've ever talked about this.
Not about your kids, but when kids are sent to rehab at a really early age, it doesn't necessarily set them up for success with recovery.
Right. So ask Aaron Carr, what do you do?
So my first line of defense is making sure that they have access to things that will prevent them from dying.
Sure, but do you keep the kid in the house if they're fucking wasted on opiates in the house all day? Fucking stealing from you, stealing the jade pendant.
That you're talking about like a lot of different lines and boundaries there, right?
Sure,
so
yes.
yeah, sure. If your child is stealing from you,
wasted.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't get them any help, but I'm saying that like I think that a lot of our traditional forms of rehab do not work well at all and actually have an opposite effect with young people.
So you're saying you would...
And unfortunately, as much as we might not like it, there is some having to let them ride it out and just try. And I say this as somebody who recently has been speaking to parents who lost, 16-year-old to an fentanyl overdose,
Right. Yeah, it's horrible. It's like I get your point because you keep somebody alive because maybe one day they get sober.
Well, it's not even just maybe one day. It's not like you're not going to do anything else other than that. It's just that like that's first line of defense. First line of defense has to be keeping people alive, bottom line.
Right.
And then it doesn't mean that you don't do anything else.
So is it bad that my instinct was to kill the cat? Like, does that somehow like play a part in this? Cat's got to go. I mean, I don't think you should kill the junkie child, but I think this is, and maybe like it's not important. I think it would be so horrible. And I've known lots of old people that were opiate addicts, and they were opiate addicts from when they were young people, and then they're old people, and they're the funniest people in the world, old opiate addicts, but they're a mess. You know? And it would be so depressing to have your children be on long-term opiates.
Of course.
That would be
it would be horrible. But I think that there's a lot of things that you can do to help them that don't involve being a cop.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah, I do not. I think drug testing your kids as a preventative measure, I agree with
It's
you.
a bad idea.
Bad idea. But I think you might as well test if you're sure.
I also think that I was talking to somebody about this recently. I don't know. I did not experience peer pressure around drugs.
I didn't either.
And I'm saying
I probably pushed peer pressure.
Obviously, like, I know I was using, but the people I went to school with didn't know I was using. So there were a lot of people I knew who were using other drugs. They might offer me something, but there was no pressure.
Yeah, but just because you and I didn't deal, I mean, I grew up. I went to this school, like this brilliant school, with all these kids, whatever, and I peer pressured. They all did heroin because they'd come over. I'd be like, "You should try it." So
I was
all
a little
of my
bit
friends,
like that too.
all my friends who never
Later.
would have tried heroin did heroin, and like it didn't stick, thank God, or none of them became heroin addicts or died. But like nobody did that to me at all.
Right. But I also think that like the whole idea of like peer pressure and like gateway drugs is really so ingrained in like the old methodology of drug education and that dare shit that we grew up on. And I just don't, from my experience having a teenager who I have really, really open communication with about drugs, and his friends have been also very open with me, maybe in ways that they aren't with their parents, I think that doesn't really work.
Right. It's just it's such a slippery slope because you can start the conversation in one place and then it ends up in a, like, you can have an open and honest relationship with your kid and things are good. It's like when things get bad.
It's not that like that you're going to prevent it from ever happening, but the thing is that somebody armed with the example of their parents recovering has a much greater chance of recovering based on that model,
or deterring them from ever even getting there.
Yeah,
like I think that's good, and I think you're right, and I like what you're doing here. Like you're adding some new ideas to the draconian world of drug abuse, and I think I don't know if you guys know, you don't know about this, but Erin's got a lot of stuff cooking.
I do. I have a lot of stuff cooking, and a lot of it is around advocacy and speaking. I've started meeting with Congress representatives about drug policy reform, and there's legislation coming up before the House. So I'm very, very, very invested in this. And I'm also very invested in how we talk to kids about drugs and how we
I'm like Archie Bunker
parents.
At this point. Get him out of the house. But I think I like what you're saying. I think you have some good stuff, and I think I would like to help you.
Yes.
And the Dopey Foundation is up and running.
Yeah.
People are donating to the Dopey
That's
Foundation.
awesome.
There's money in the Dopey Foundation's coffers to support your plans.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, my big goal is to influence the way that schools educate children about drugs.
We didn't talk about the incredible thing that DopeyCon is going to be at all. You interrupted me and started talking about your fucking scholarship. DopeyCon is coming
I'm sorry.
October 1st. Erin will be there.
I will be there
cooking it up.
with bells on.
Well, you don't need to wear bells for this thing. But
you can hear me when I come in the room like a cat.
The most incredible thing there's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah.
A lot of surprises.
I don't even know what's happening.
Prizes. Cool shit is going down.
Yeah.
You'll find out as it gets developed. So far, supposedly, Brandon Novak has said he's on.
Nice.
Andy Roy said he's coming.
Great.
Skinny Vinny wants to come.
Yeah.
We'll see if he comes.
Yeah.
Fucking Dr. Drew said
Awesome.
he's coming.
Oh my God. I haven't seen him since I was in rehab with him.
Well, there you go. But most importantly is members of the Dopey Nation will be there.
Yay.
It will be a full,
Yay.
and Katz is going to be cutting pastrami. It's going to be a full fangled fucking thing.
Frolic.
Yes, all that
Full
shit.
fangled frolic.
So thank you, Ask Erin Carr, and Erin's maybe has a TV show coming out.
Well, yes, things are.
There's a lot of stuff cooking.
Wheels are turning
in the Erin Carr kitchen. All right, so thank you for coming on, and fucking thank you for listening. Send in an email. You know what? Leave a goddamn fucking review, because reviews are very important.
Leave a review, and if you're a Patreon member and you want to take the writing workshop,
what should they
hit
do?
up Dave or hit up me,
right.
one of us,
Hit
and
up
tell
one of
me.
us.
And the first two people to do it will get the spots. So.
Wow, there you go. So get going, and thank you again, and stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris.
Toodles.
Wanna take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good until I get some money in my pocket. Then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood, 'cause I wanna be so good, so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be so good, so bad. But bad desire's all I've ever had. I wanna take a ride up in the sky and watch the aeroplanes just pass me by. I wanna see a Learjet liner take a dive, show all the people what it means to be alive, 'cause I wanna be so good, so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad. Bad desire's all I